At 20, Clara Hayes had known only the dust and silence of her father's failing ranch. When drought came and debts rose, her father made a desperate bargain. A letter was sent to Baron Whitlock, a man known across the territory as the richest and most feared landowner west of the Mississippi. In return for saving the Hayes land, Clara would be sent to live under his care. Some whispered he was cruel, others that he was cursed. As the sun sank over the dry plains, Clara stood by the wagon that would take her away, her heart pounding with dread. The journey to the Baron's estate was long and silent. The driver spoke little, but when the great house came into view, even he slowed in awe. It sat on a rise above the valley, stone walls, wide verandas, and guards at every gate. No man in town dared look the Baron in the eye, yet his wealth fed half the county. When the carriage stopped, Clara stepped out, her dress fluttering in the desert wind. A tall man in a dark coat waited on the steps, his eyes unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. "Miss Hayes," he said in a low voice, "you're safe here." His tone was polite, but distant. Baron Whitlock was younger than she expected, no more than 35, with sharp features and a faint scar tracing his jaw. He turned toward the mansion doors without another word. Inside, the halls were wide, lined with portraits and candlelight. The servants bowed as he passed. Clara followed quietly, feeling like a trespasser in a museum of power and silence. That night, she was given a room overlooking the valley, beautiful but colder than stone. Days passed slowly in the Baron's household. He spoke little, often disappearing for hours to tend business. Clara spent her time reading in the library, or wandering the rose garden that bloomed against the dry wind. The servants treated her with respect, though none dared gossip about their master. One evening she found him at the piano, his hands moving gently over the keys. She stood in the doorway, surprised. "I didn't know you played," she said softly. He looked up with a faint smile. "Few people know anything real about me, Miss Hayes." Then he turned back to the music. It was in the stables that Clara first saw a different side of him. A wild stallion had thrown a ranch hand, nearly trampling him. Before anyone could act, the Baron strode forward, catching the reins barehanded, speaking softly until the animal calmed. His control was effortless, born not of force but understanding. Clara watched, astonished. When he noticed her, he said quietly, "Strength isn't always loud, Miss Hayes." She nodded, feeling a strange warmth rise within her chest. From that day on, she began to see beyond the rumors, to a man burdened by loneliness rather than pride. One afternoon, while walking the fields, she overheard men talking near the barn. "He saved her family's land," one whispered, "but he wants nothing in return." Another spat into the dirt. "No man gives without reason." Clara's hands trembled. Had he truly done all this without expecting anything? That evening, she approached him in the study. "Why help my family?" she asked. He looked at her for a long time before replying, "Because once someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. Now I try to do the same." His words lingered like a prayer. As summer burned over the plains, trouble came from the neighboring ranchers. Men jealous of Whitlock's power began plotting to take his land. Clara woke one night to the sound of hooves and shouting. The Baron was already gone, rifle in hand. From the balcony, she saw firelight in the distance and men riding hard across the fields. She ran to the stables, heart racing. When he returned before dawn, his coat was torn and smoke clung to his skin. "They tried," he said calmly, "but the land still stands." She cleaned the wound on his arm in silence, tears falling quietly. In the days that followed, Clara stayed close to him. She helped tend to the horses, brought him coffee during his long hours of work, and began learning how to manage accounts. The staff whispered about the change. The cold manor now felt alive again. One evening, when a storm rolled across the valley, lightning flashing against the hills, the power went out. Clara found him in the library, staring out the window. "Does it ever stop?" she asked softly. "The fighting, the fear?" He looked at her and said, "Only when someone chooses peace." Then, for the first time, he smiled. Autumn painted the valley gold. The harvest was strong, and the Hayes ranch had recovered under the Baron's protection. One morning, Clara rode out with him to oversee the workers. As they rested under an oak tree, he handed her a canteen. "You've changed this place," he said quietly. "No," she replied, "you just let it breathe." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "You sound like my mother." She smiled. Then she must have been wise. For a moment the air between them grew still. She looked at him, not as the feared Baron, but as a man who had carried too much alone. Winter crept in with soft snow and silence. The mansion glowed warmly against the cold, filled with laughter from the staff Clara had helped bring together. On Christmas Eve, she stood by the piano, watching the Baron light candles along the mantel. "I never thought I'd see this house alive again," he said quietly. She approached, placing a hand on his arm. "You gave it life first," she replied. He looked down at her hand but didn't move it away. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, perfect flakes. For the first time, the Baron seemed truly at peace. But peace never lasted long in the West. Early spring brought new threats. Railway men demanding land, offering bribes, then turning to violence when refused. One morning, Clara found bullet holes in the gate. "They'll keep coming," she said fearfully. "Let them," he replied. "We'll stand our ground." Together, they faced the men side by side. Her courage astonished even him. The attackers were driven away, humiliated by the Baron's calm defiance. As the dust settled, he turned to her. "You're braver than most men I've known," he said. "No," she replied. "I just have something worth protecting." By summer, the valley had grown lush again. The Baron's name was no longer spoken with fear but respect. Travelers stopped at his gate seeking fair work, and he offered it freely. Clara managed the accounts, taught the workers' children to read, and filled the mansion with laughter and light. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Baron stood beside her on the porch. "You've changed everything," he said softly. She looked out at the land. Maybe we both did. Their hands brushed, and for a long, quiet moment, the two stood together as equals, not master and ward, but partners. Years later, people still told stories of Baron Whitlock and the young woman who melted the ice around his heart. Some called it a legend, others a miracle. The mansion remained a place of refuge for anyone in need. Travelers swore that if you passed by at night, you could still see two figures standing on the porch, the Baron and the woman he never expected to love, watching over the valley they had built together. In a world of greed and violence, theirs became a story of quiet kindness, proof that even in the Wild West, compassion could tame the wildest of hearts.